It's been a year of incredible adventure, excitement, love, joy, happiness, gratitude. Amazing. Salut les amis! Welcome to my channel. Bienvenue à ma chaîne. Je suis Karen. I'm Karen. I'm an American living in France. I'm an entrepreneur, a designer, and a newlywed. And today, in honor of the fact that it was just a few days ago, my 1-year anniversary of actually moving to France. I got married a little over a year ago, and then I had to go back to New York to wrap things up, finalize my apartment, all that kind of stuff. And then I moved back to France as soon as I could after that. So it's been a year here in France. I absolutely love living in France. The pace of life, just the beauty of the country. You know, the organization, I have to say, is not bad. There's so much to love about it. The food, the wine, the cheese. I mean, what's not to love? In looking back on my experience, I do realize that there are a few things I kind of wish I had known a little bit more about before I moved. It just would have been helpful. And I know, of course, when you're moving to a new country, there's always going to be things that you have to, find out, that you have to discover by doing them. But I'm all for sharing the wealth of knowledge if this helps anyone else who's considering or planning to move to France. And I know that with some of my other American friends here in Paris, we kind of text each other as things come up, like, oh, hey, for your visa renewal, are you using these documents or these documents, just so that we can try to be as well prepared as possible. The number one thing I wish I had really taken more seriously before moving to France is just the French administration, l'administration française. There are just a lot of processes. I've never moved to another country before, so this is the first time, and I am, of course, very lucky because my husband is French, and so he has helped me enormously with every single thing. I do speak French, so that has helped me a great deal as well. Even with all of that, I was not really prepared for the level of paperwork. And again, I'm saying this just from my experience here. I'm sure that there are paperwork nightmares for people coming to the US and moving to any country as well. Some of the things around this, just to get more specific, that I would like to share. One of them would be the fact that you have to have all of your documents, your US documents, translated into French. So in terms of like your birth certificate, for example, if you did get married in the US, you'll need to have a translation of that document. When we were getting married, for example, I had to present proof of my residence in the US because I still lived there at the time. And so I had to, present like a phone bill, and I had to have that phone bill translated into French. And I will just one up you on that because it's not just any translation. I could have translated those documents myself, but it's not permitted to do that. So please don't go online and just find any translator and give them your documents and pay for them to be translated, because they may not be accepted. They won't be accepted unless the translator has a specific title that is granted by the French state, and that's called un traducteur assermenté. And this is like a state authorized translator. So there's a list of them. You can find them online, but I would suggest that you locate a translator that is authorized by France to help you with all those things, because if you get one, you can work with them repeatedly, like if you need to get an up-to-date translation. For example, in France, birth certificates are they're not just birth certificates. They're a kind of a living document that goes with you your whole life. So if you're born in France, every time you have a major life change, you get married, get divorced, if you have children, all these things are added to your birth certificate. So it becomes this living record of sort of life events. Of course, in the States, our birth certificates are just a one-time document. It's just a document of the date and time that you were born and the place that you were born and the names of your parents. That's it. There's not a whole lot of information on it. But in France, when you present your birth certificate, it has to be a recent copy, and there are varying schools of exactly how recent it needs to be. Some people say it's 3 months. Some people say for Americans it's 6 months or even a year. I suggest you check with whatever authority you are going to be presenting your document to. And then sometimes it's not the document that needs to be dated within that shorter time frame, but it's just the translation of that document, as I was told by my traducteur assermenté. For certain situations. So it's just very important to be on top of that, and to know that if you've got a big meeting, to renew a visa, for example, that you're going to need to get your documents in order in time. And then just kind of adding on to that point about the French administration is just to understand that things take time. I'm sure in the States they take time too, but here it's just a process that you may have to go through when, let's say, for example, right now I am renewing my, I've been here for a year, so my visa has expired. And before it expired, I had to go to the sous-prefecture and give them all my documents and make a dossier, a file, so that they could renew my titre de séjour. So when I went to the sous-prefecture to do my meeting, for example, they rejected me once because I had a phone bill with my name on it and my husband's name on it, but I only brought that first page that listed that information, which I thought was pertinent. And in fact, I needed to have all the pages. And so there are certain little tricks like this that are not really listed anywhere on the list of documents that you might even find on the French government website, like the fact that the marriage certificate, had to be issued less than 3 months ago. That was not on their list of documents. And so the first time I went, they told me that was another problem. The marriage certificate was too old because it was almost a year old. And so now, for example, I am waiting for my card my visa card to renew my visa. And so they gave me a little receipt. It's called a récépissé. That's a document that says that I have submitted everything and that they've accepted everything, but that it's a stand-in for the actual visa. So I'm visa-less, but with a récépissé, and I don't know how long that will go on. There's conflicting information about how much I can travel with that récépissé. If anyone has experience with this and you want to comment about it below, please go ahead. I was told by my sous-prefecture that it would be a good idea not to travel outside of Europe until I have the actual visa, because you never know, there could be a problem coming back. Probably not, I don't know. That's a little bit about the French administration. The number 2 thing I wish I had known before moving to France: bank accounts for Americans in France. And I don't know if this goes all the way across Europe, but in France, I had no idea that it would be so difficult for me to get a bank account. Have my money, want to put it in the bank and be able to get my little bank card and do all the things that you do. Lo and behold, I got rejected by 3 or 4 banks because I am American. And I was like, hey, what does this mean? The US government requires a lot of reporting from European banks on Americans who are living in France and or Europe. And so it requires more work for the banks to do this reporting. And I guess what I understand, although I'm not an expert in this, is that there can be fines against the bank if, for example, they don't fully report whatever this information is. And I don't even know what the information is, to be honest with you. It took me going into 3 or 4 banks. I have been told that if you are married, paxed or associated with a French citizen, it can be helpful to go into their bank. I don't know if that's really true, but it's not something that I tried. I just ended up going to our local bank here, and I was able to open an account, and I've had no problems at all. Number 3 on my list of things I wish I had known more about. By and large, from what I can tell, again, my experience, people here don't really use credit cards very much at all. If you're traveling here, you can certainly use your American credit card, no problem at all. For the most part here, people seem to use their carte bleue, which is your bank card, like a debit card. And it's really interesting the way it works, at least at my bank, because what they do is they keep track of all my charges for the month, and then they debit it all at one time at the end of the month. So it's like you're almost getting that benefit of having the use of your money for a little bit longer, and you're not paying interest, although you pay bank fees, and then they just take all of the money out on a certain date each month, depending on, I guess, your statement of your bank. Yeah, so I wish that I had known more about this before I moved to France. Just good to know. I might have done a little bit more research and had a slightly easier process. So bank accounts for Americans, who knew? Number 4, taxes for US expats. Basically just really important to look at your tax situation. If you can look at it before you leave the US and make sure you understand, talk to your accountant there. The bottom line is that the US is one of only 2 countries in the world that requires its citizens to file a tax return in almost every single case, no matter if they live in the US or not. So what that means for me is I have to file a tax return in the US and a tax return in France. Now, as I understand it, and I'm going through it for the first time right now, very nervous, but there is a reciprocal agreement so that hopefully you're not going to be double taxed. You won't be paying twice, but you do have to report the information in both places, so can add to your costs. So that's something that I wish I had understood. I knew a little bit about it, but I hadn't done all of the research that I wish. This one is number 5 on the list of things I wish I had known. What is called la formation civique. La formation civique, oui, your resident training. And so this is a part of the integration process as you move to France, preparing you for a life here so that you fully understand what your rights and your responsibilities as a resident are, the services that you can learn about and take advantage of, the amazing healthcare system, job trainings, history of France, which is so fascinating, just all sorts of things like that, and resources if you need help for unemployment or even domestic violence and all these different things. And it was actually 4 full days of training over 4 weeks. It was really interesting. I was in a room with a whole lot of other people who have moved to France, and we were all learning about what life in France is like. Yeah, I found that to be a surprisingly cool way to welcome people into the country, and I really personally enjoyed it. But what's really important is at that training, you have to keep all of the documents that they give you, your proof that you've done it, they give you a medical exam, for example. You have to take a language test to qualify your language level in French. If you need language lessons, they will provide them for you. As I understand, I think they're free or very inexpensive. That's from the office of OFII. OFII, and they are the Office of Integration in France. Number 6 of what I wish I had known before making the move to France. Okay, now here is the absolute pinnacle of what I wish I had known, that I just had zero idea of the level of effort this was going to require, and that is getting my French driver's license. Mind-blowing, mind-blowing. If you're interested in learning about that, I made a bunch of videos because it's ongoing, okay? It's just something that, having been not lifelong driver, but since the age of 16, coming from Ohio, driving a manual, parking on hills, like zero problem, driving in New York City for a very long time, had no idea what was going to be involved in not driving here, but getting a driving permit. That I wish someone had prepared me for, because I think I would have taken a different approach. I came into that experience a little bit cocky, just because I was like, what are you going to tell me about driving? And trust me, with anything, the French really don't like that attitude at all, and I understand why. The more that I do learn, the more I really respect the level of training that they require of drivers here. My experience has made me a better driver. I just wish that I had known what I was going to have to go through, because I would have mentally prepared myself, and I probably would have been more accepting of certain things at the very beginning, as opposed to kind of pushing back a little bit and then finding myself still being not having what I want. And also, I talk in those videos about the fact that there are certain states in the US that have a reciprocal agreement where you can just exchange your license. But I'm going to say it again, public service announcement. I don't care if you have a driving permit from a state that will allow you to exchange it here. You really, really should take some hours of driving, because there are things that you don't know that you don't know. Priorité à droite, rond-point, giratoire. You don't know them. And if you don't know those things, you could really find yourself in a dangerous situation in certain cases. And I know more than one person who's been in an accident because of those very things. Anyway, that was my top thing that I wish I had known what I was getting myself into, so that I could have mentally prepared myself for the incredible struggle that I'm going through. Okay, everybody, I hope you found this video helpful. If you are planning a move to France right now, or are in the middle of a move to France, drop me a comment. I would love to hear what your experience is. Feel free to share your tips, tricks, and advice. We can all use it. Wishing you all a very, very good luck if you are planning a move to France. I absolutely love it here. I'm so proud to be a French resident. I'm just loving my life. La vie est belle. So I wish you all a bonne journée. À bientôt, les amis.